G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope that you are super well. And today, well, I'm bringing you a little bit of news, but in a new and different way. Yes, indeed. I thought it was time to bring Joe from behind the camera to, in front of the camera. Joe, how are you, mate?
I'm great, Matt. And yourself?
Yes. I'm a barrel of monkeys. I would say it's about 7 or 8 monkeys that I'm a barrel of, but I'm good. I'm very good, and I'm very, very happy to be having you here on the channel. And you're going to be sharing some of your expertise, and I want to share what Joe's background is. So Joe's been in manufacturing and creating of things for 30 years, and we're talking heavy machinery, but we're talking all the way from art projects, people's art projects, all the way to heavy machinery. Joe's got a background in engineering, but he's also a keen photographer as well. He had a bit of a break from that in between, I don't know, what was it? There was the opera singing, the cycling, and he can tell you about all that in another episode. But he's coming back to photography with a vengeance, and I thought it was time that Joe came on this side of the camera so we could share some of the love. So how are you going, Joe?
I'm enjoying it so far.
I thought what Joe and I would probably do is, because of Joe's engineering background, and he's also just as much of a nerd, if perhaps not even more of a nerd than I am when it just comes to the technical, how is it made, why is it made, how hard is it to make it, and all that sort of stuff. Well, I thought it made perfect sense for Joe to weigh in on all of these topics that we spend a lot of time talking about. So we're going to start with, so there's a few things we're going to talk about, and we'll bullet point them here on the screen right now. And we're going to start with the new Sony 24-70 2.8 GM number 2.
I'm pretty excited about a new lens from Sony coming out, 24-70. It's the stock standard lens for a professional photographer to have in their kit. It's what most wedding photographers are going to have, most event photographers. And Sony said in their press release, I think they talked about their customer basic, just their needs being developed a little more, or wanting more from their next 24-70 lens. Is that it's a lighter lens. So Sony users are going to love that.
Yeah, well, I believe it's 730 grams with a lens cap, which I think is very important to weigh with a lens cap. I've got to admit, I got this number from Gerald Undone, and I thought we could go with the lens weight, or we could go with it with a lens cap. I think it makes more sense because most people have a lens cap in their bag. And, you know, when you're getting on a plane, you've got to include the lens cap, don't you? So, yeah, 730 grams is very light.
It is.
It's very light. And it's very small as well.
We've discovered this minor focus breathing. Mine is okay. Mine is all right. It's not exactly a parfocal lens, I hear.
Yes.
So that's something that I would be I'd be a little concerned about if I was doing some video recording at the higher end. Certainly not if you're just doing a bit of run and gun, it's not a problem. But if you're doing some professional production work, or if you want to use the lens for that type of work, say on a high spec body, it's certainly something that's going to be limiting.
Yeah, and let's explain what parfocal actually means. From what I understand, it means if we zoom in to say 70mm and we focus, and we get focus, and then we zoom back out to 35, the lens falls out of focus. So it kind of means that, and I've been on a lot of TV commercials where that's exactly how you find focus, is by doing that. And you can't find focus that way. Now, I suppose everyone would argue that the Sony focus system's so extraordinary, you don't need it. But what if you want to do a zoom during your take? Yep. And that means it'll fall out of focus if you're in manual focus. So that's what that means. We don't want to get too excited about it. Like, it's one of those things. And like in everything in life, you've got to weigh up the pros and the cons, don't you? And the pros are it's small, it's light. I don't think it's particularly cheap, but small and light is what some people thought mirrorless was going to be all about. And I'm not sure I think it's all about that, but, you know, that's what some people think.
The other thing that we should consider with a lens that's not parfocal is that when you start getting into the professional productions, you're not relying so much on autofocus anymore. You're starting to pull focus yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So for a camera operator, when they're controlling their zoom, they might be zooming through a pan and all that type of stuff. They don't want their focus point changing while they're actually pulling zoom. So, yeah.
Well, there you go. So that's cool. It does have new linear XD focus motors, which are super fast, super cool. So very quick to focus. The focus ring is linear, which of course means that how the travel remains consistent. I thought this was an interesting feature that you can change the friction level. But it's on the zoom. So it allows you to do a smooth zoom, which I think is smart.
That's great. That's going to allow operators to rubber band their zooms and play around with that a lot. Fantastic.
Yeah. Interesting that is a positive thing for video, the more friction zoom, but lack of parfocal is a negative for video along with the focus breathing. So it's confusing. It's confusing. They do one thing on one hand and then give it on one hand and take it away on the other hand. Anyway, these are minor things, and as certainly interestingly, pretty much none of this affects photographers.
Photographers are going to be thrilled with this lens. Lighter. It's going to be light. It's going to be super sharp.
If I jump onto Adorama right now, which you can see here on your screens, we can see that the new lens is $2,300 US, and the previous lens is $1,998 at the moment. So not much of a difference between these lenses. I'm not sure why it's so small. It may well be about supply and demand. They might actually not be able to fulfill, because that's like, wouldn't you just buy the new one for $300 more? I think I would. Okay. So in further Sony news, we've got Lexa coming into the CF Express Type A space, and they are bringing us a 320, 160, and 80 gigabyte card sizes. Now, for us that have been using CF Express Type B, Joe, we can now get 4 terabyte CF Express and 320 gig.
I'm happy that there are other manufacturers getting into this space.
Yep.
I think it's great.
Yep.
But it's antiquated, and I don't mean to be so negative about it, but you really want to get high performance into these cards, and sure, they're spec'd really well for what they do, but they're pretty small.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening here? Is this an actual physical limit, or is this just some sort of commercial limit? And from my perspective, you're selling a Sony A1 with 8K recording, and you're going to fill up that 360 gigabytes very quickly versus 4 terabytes, which is more than 10 times larger. Because I believe SD cards have gotten bigger than 320 gig. I think they're up to a terabyte now in that very small form factor. So I would have thought CF Express Type A could get bigger, but also they're considerably slower. So not only are they smaller, but they're slower. So ultimately, we would all agree it's fantastic to see a new card manufacturer in the space, but I don't know what Sony are playing at here with delivering a top-of-the-range camera, which is currently in this format up against both Nikon, Canon, Panasonic, and I think there might be a Red camera and a few other cameras that use CF Express Type B, which is really exploding. Like, there are a lot of options now, and there are some extraordinarily affordable ones.
Yeah, I think you're right. It sounds like a licensing issue. They might be throttling that licensing issue for some reason. They're holding it back. I can't say.
Yeah, we don't know, but come on, Sony. Give Sony users a bit more wriggle room. If you want to sell that 8K as being, usable, then we need cards that can. I don't know what the highest spec codec on the A1 is in 8K. As we know with the Z9, it's now 8K, 8.3K 60 RAW. So there was some, it was like 15 minutes and you filled half. I think you would fill one of these cards, actually. I think Ricci showed us that he filled, I can't remember, something like 300 gig in like 14 minutes. Go.
Can I suggest something cheeky?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. Does Sony have an issue overheating in 8K at all? Do we know?
I've heard confliction. Yes, there you go. That could be a reason.
Okay, so what they're saying is it's never a problem because you're never going to record more than 15 minutes anyway.
And I tried to find whether there was an actual limit, and I kind of couldn't find it one way or another. but card size creates a limit. Anyway, let's move on from that but ultimately, like, we want to talk about this stuff because we ultimately want to explore, like, okay, why this limit? Why is Type A? For me, there's two parts. Why is Type A limited? And why did Sony choose Type A for their top of the range camera that in this country is near $10,000? So they're the things that I want to explore. Because if you want professionals to actually use them as professionally as they can, then you want to give them the format that's in the market that's, got the most latitude. Yeah. And it isn't Type A. It's just simply not. So I want to know I'd love to understand what Sony's decision is there. Let's jump away from Sony and jump into a little bit of Canon news this is a rumor. And the rumor is that there is an R7 looming in the wings, and it's going to be APS-C. Tell us more about the spec, Joe. Run us through it.
So we're talking about 32 megapixel APS-C sensor.
Yep.
20 frames a second. So this is right in that wildlife space. 20 frames a second, APS-C, so they're going to get that extra reach on their zoom lenses. There's going to be a stack of Canon users that are currently going to rejoice in an R7 because the R3 is possibly way too pricey for them. So hopefully an R7 is going to be cheaper. What else have we got here? One CF Express and one SD card. So there's two card slots.
That'd be CF Express Type B.
Of course it would.
Yes, it would.
Of course it would.
Yeah.
4K 60 frames a second. That's nice. Be nice if it was 120. But I don't know that that's going to be required for this particular segment of the market they're aiming for. I don't know. 1080p 240 frames.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So they're kind of skipping past that 120 frames in 4K. Maybe it's a data handling thing.
It's a quarter. Yeah. So a quarter is 60.
C-Log 3, cool.
Great, love a bit of that. Love a little bit of log in my life.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? Hey, can't get enough log.
The latest hot shoe, of course, Canon have got their smart hot shoe, which is great. I'd like to see them actually lean into a bit of their hot shoe stuff.
Well, tell me, what would you like to see in the hot shoe? So the things that we know about that are potentials are audio that exists. Other things could be that monitors, like the one we have here, can be driven and powered off that digital shoe. I don't know what flashes, but they already work with the current I/O.
There might be some wireless communication between cameras going on.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'd stick in an external. What you want to do. And I think what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we've got a computer body here, so we don't limit the development of this particular body or this chassis or this camera body. What they might be saying is, okay, we're going to leave ourselves plug and play options so they can keep on rolling out things to upgrade the body in time. So the things like you could have 6 camera synchronization, or you could have cameras talking to other devices. That's the exciting thing about having a smart hot shoe. So yeah, I think it's a great idea for future-proofing the camera.
Do you reckon you could do that sort of stuff via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, which are in all cameras now?
Yeah, you might be able to. What this does is this just gives you further capacity. So we don't know what they have in store. There might be wired solutions that they want as well. So who knows? Yes,
because I know, for example, Apple in regards to the music, and you've got your HomePods, and they manage to ping each other, work out the latencies, and even so one's further from the base station. They just all talk to each other at the speed of light, of course, and then work out how to get everything in sync, and they can do it. So obviously Apple are a $2 trillion company. They've got a little bit of money to wriggle around with. But I feel like that stuff's probably not that hard to get right. Anyway, we would love to see digital hot shoes do more than the not much that they do right now. Yep. Audio's lovely, but we get great audio all sorts of ways, really, to be honest, at the moment. 32 megapixels, APS-C, so that's the equivalent of a 64 megapixel sensor. right? Because APS-C is basically half the size, although Canon's APS-C is smaller. I wonder if this is real, whether they'll continue with their smaller than everyone. I think their crop is a 1.6, whereas everyone else is a 1.5. Personally, from my perspective, I would love to see an R1 before I saw an R7. I think that of Canon, Nikon, and Sony, that's what we need to see from Canon, and there's really no sign of that. So I don't really know where an R7 really fits, because the R5 is supposed to be a stellar camera for photography. Yep. Obviously, I presume you can shoot in a crop mode. You've got your high frame rates. You've got your 8K. It's a great stills camera. So is this filling a niche they don't need to fill, and they've got a more serious other niche that they need to fill in that of the R1? So how do you rate the chances, is where I'm going with this, of this rumoured R7 happening? And do you think it's a good idea?
If it's an inexpensive camera for people to step into the next Canon body that have had Canons for years, I think it's a great way to move forward, because I don't think everyone's prepared to go and spend $4,000 or $5,000 Australian dollars to buy their next body. So if it's a $2,000 body or $2,500 body, because it's somewhat stripped back, that would be fantastic. Marketing wise, I think they're going to maintain a lot of their market if that's what the price point is of this camera, because the specs are pretty good. We know that APS-C shooters, wildlife shooters, love APS-C cameras, and most of these guys that are going out and shooting on the weekend, a lot of them don't want to go and spend $5,000 on the next body. They might want to spend $2,500. They might sell 4 or 5 times as many R7s as they do R1s or R3s.
There you go. There's some practicality. You heard it here from Joe. Thank you, Joe. Let's move on to the Fuji rumors. Now, a lot of these Fuji rumors are not rumors, because we know this event's coming. They've said to us we've got stacked sensors coming. It's really a matter of exactly. It's a bit like the initial Z9 that they said, here's the Z9, and they told us about 3 of the specs, and then it took another 6 months to hear what was next. Well, this is almost exactly the same sort of thing. So let's talk about what's rumoured. 2
cameras, I believe. There's the Fujifilm X-H2S.
The X-H2S. And what's the spec of that one?
It's a 26 megapixel stacked sensor camera.
BSI, isn't it? No less than a BSI. Yep. 26 megapixels in APS-C. So again, that's equivalent to 52. So that's basically very similar to what the A1 is. So we think I think that's totally possible that exists. Absolutely.
Yep.
It's basically a Sony A1 size sensor, stacked, blah, blah, blah. So tick. That sounds like a very, very reputable rumor. Next
is the X-H2, which is a 40 megapixel camera. And so that fits right in the space of the Z9 as well.
This is 40 megapixels in an APS-C sized sensor, and that then is equivalent to 80 megapixels. Might I add that we've heard rumours of Canon going into those sort of numbers, Sony going into those sort of numbers. I'm still always going to come back to what ends up being the signal to noise ratio when your pixels, your dot pitch of your pixels are getting that small. And has anyone made any breakthrough technologies that are, pushing past what Sony and Nikon and Canon are doing today? And I haven't heard about it. Thoughts?
Well, thoughts is that Fujifilm has been in this space in the photography game for a long time. So if any company is going to do it, then a company not like Fujifilm, they've got the know-how. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful, because it'd be great to see another breakthrough, because what it's going to do is it's going to push everyone else along. It's going to say to Sony and Nikon and Canon, it's going to say, well, look, we're out front now. So look, we can only hope that every time a manufacturer releases a new camera, that things get better each time. So let's just hope so.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, 60 to 80 megapixels is not that many extra pixels, and already the Sony A7R4 is 61 or something in that order. So it's not that much bigger. And again, to reiterate, we're expecting an A7R5, which will be bigger. We're talking about a Z8, which I think if there is a Z8, it will be bigger, bigger than 50. And there's also some distant Canon rumors in the same space. And 2 or 3 years ago, there was rumors of already an existing 100 megapixel Sony sensor. So there's been plenty of time for them to massage this stuff and make it work. So it sounds very interesting. We have this Fuji event coming up in May, at the end of May, and also rumored, Joseph, is
the Fujinon XF 150 to 600. So it's a zoom lens that, again, lots and lots of birders and wildlife photographers, they're going to be pretty happy with that.
Can you just say that 150
to 600?
So you were telling me it's 300 to 1200 equivalent. It's a 1.5. So that's 225 to 900 equivalent.
Well, it's actually quite a crowded space with regard to other lenses.
There's a technical term for a lens like that. Crazy pants. that's crazy. That's a lot. Sorry, crowded space. Go on.
Crowded space.
Yep.
Well, we know that both Tamron and Sigma have 150 to 600 lenses as well.
Yes.
Okay, with the crop, it's an effective 229 to 914 millimeters.
I was close to 225.
Yeah.
229 to
914.
914. Who even, it's very precise, isn't it? Using the 800 PF, that is a lot of lens, 914. That's a ton. Okay, so talk to me more. Tell me how you feel. Joe's a birder. Joe likes to bird. So tell me how you feel about a lens like this, Joe.
Very exciting.
Yes.
Very exciting.
Yes.
There's other lenses that are good selling lenses in that space that are also very good performers. Both Tamron and Sigma have the same length lens.
So the idea of having 26 megapixels stacked BSI sensor, we're expecting it to be fast. It's probably going to do 20 or 30 frames. It could do 30 frames per second because Nikon and Canon and Sony are achieving very high frame rates with full frame and more megapixels. So for birders, this could be pretty nuts. Which does make me think a little bit about the Olympus OM1. Coming soon, that also is, in this smaller sensor size and it has all this computational stuff going on. I feel like we're going to get a lot of that from this Fuji as well, because I do think they've got to make up a little bit for their sensor size with a bit of extra juice, under the bonnet, by way of computational stuff. So, for example, the Olympus, it's only 20 megapixels, but it's got modes where you can hand hold it up to 50 megapixels. It just takes multiple shots really quickly, and 80 megapixels, I think, if it's on a tripod. And there's so much computational stuff in that camera.
These cameras these days are not cameras anymore. They are computers. So the freedom that the developers have, and they're all technology companies now with lenses. That's what they are. They're technology companies with a camera body.
This makes me ponder, is it possible that Fuji might go electronic shutter only?
Oh, that'd be great.
Huh?
That'd be great. Why not?
Well, I mean, Nikon have done it, and they've been that. Everyone probably in the industry has known about this probably for the last year or two, that this was coming.
Oh, I think it'd be very exciting.
And it makes even more sense with a smaller sensor with less pixels. Like this camera, if it's 26, has almost half the work to do of the Z9. So which means it could scan faster. And then, of course, we really are in that space of, because both, Joe and I have both worked with the Z9 a fair bit now, and we really do feel like it's, I mean, I don't want to speak on your behalf, so you can say your part, but we talk about this stuff a lot, and that the Z9 really is a box with a sensor, with storage and a battery and a super duper processor. And it has far more capacity to be kind of upgraded and augmented and changed and, improved for a long time to come, because you've removed one of the most fundamental difficult aspects, which is the shutter from my perspective. And you've put a lightning fast sensor in there. So it feels to me like the next step.
I think that because it's also such a low megapixel camera, that why not shoot 30 frames a second RAW? Why not? Its data transfer it's going to be shipping much less data. So
Sony can do it now. When they do it, I believe it's 12-bit, not 14-bit. So, but they're doing 50 megapixels. So I simply can't see why Fuji won't be able to.
You know, I think I told you I was out yesterday and the day before with the Z9, shooting at 20 frames a second, and I actually had to dial it back. I was shooting birds in flight, all sorts of things, and I just pulled it back to 15 frames a second because 20 frames a second was actually just too much, right? It's you're taking a 1.5 second burst.
Yeah.
No need to have 4,000 frames. If we were always taking great shots at 6 frames or 8 or 10 frames a second.
Yeah. Well, can we just say that prior to that, it's the Z6, which you were very happy with.
Oh, I was loving it. And I think that was shooting 12 frames a second.
Yep. I don't know. Is it 12? I don't know.
It could be. I don't know.
Because I don't do that stuff.
Yeah, I know. But shooting 15 frames a second was fine. I cranked it up to 20 frames a second for a while.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely fine. So going to a camera like this that's handling much less data, right, with much more modern componentry, you'd imagine if they want 30 frames a second, not a problem. What they might do is put through 30 frames a second at 16-bit, right?
Wow.
What would be great is if they could do that with even higher. Can you imagine if they went higher than 16-bit?
Now we're going to go to general banter. So if at this point in time you don't want to hang around for us to shoot the breeze, we'll see you next time. And thanks for coming. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Okay, Joe, what would you like to banter about this week?
Joe and I continued to banter for another hour, and in the interests of world peace, we decided that we would put this in another episode. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode. It has been so good to see you. I'd love to see you again, so please do subscribe, please share, and please like. And I will see you very, very soon. Bye for now.